This is the Sweet Song Podcast, where we talk about your favorite songs and the artists who make them. I'm your host, Christy York Wooten. On this episode, we talk to songwriter, singer, and new wave icon, Howard Jones. You know this already. You are one of the most inspiring performers in my lifetime. And I know there are many reasons for this aside from your talent. And one of them is I think you're the type of person, and being a musician, who values relationships and values your spiritual practice. So were you kind of born with this optimistic bent, or did you have to cultivate that like you cultivate your practice?
No, I think it's something that you I often say actually that the reason why I wanted my work to be so positive and the way I wanted to train myself to be more positive is because I know the negative, cynical side of myself. And I think, we are a mixture of both those things. And actually they are both valuable in in a strange way, because we need to be questioning of things. We can't just accept everything. We need to have some critical thinking going on. So we had to have a sort of positive element of cynicism, but then choosing to look towards the future, hopefully, rather than thinking everything is going to turn out for the worst, which is really helpful for like enjoying your life and feeling energized about your life. So it's just a lifelong daily thing to be battling with. It's not something that is suddenly over. It's something that I feel I need to work on every day, and that's why I have my practice. And I'm sure I wasn't born like that. No, this is something that you work on.
Cultivating it, just like
cultivating
like cultivating art. So wanted to ask this question. We're definitely going to get to all the juicy stuff about the Live at the O2 and the exciting tour with Haircut 100 and ABC, which just that lineup is still blowing my mind how fun that is going to be. But I wanted to ask you, gosh, especially in the US here with politics and post-pandemic and everything, music, people continue to be reaching out for music, seeking music, making space for music just to get through the day. And I don't know if you saw Michael J. Fox get on stage with Coldplay. I don't know if you saw a video of that.
Absolutely.
That was so inspiring. And what it struck me about it was that the sort of hopefulness was in the collective of the whole thing. And I wanted to ask you, like, when you're writing, are you thinking about the collective? Are you thinking about the individual, or is it this kind of marriage of both? Because I think that's what inspired people about that moment, was that it's just Chris Martin, doing his usual thing on the piano, but this collective gathered around him in a way that wasn't just a sing along or a shout along, which is what a lot of shows are now.
There's so much to unpack in that question. I mean, going back to Chris Martin, I really loved what he did that night. And I watched the whole show on the TV, even though Glastonbury is like half an hour from my house in Somerset. But the way that everything, he thought everything through about what he wanted all those things to represent, that inclusivity of other artists on the stage joining with him, Michael J. Fox, and and I thought, I love you, and I know that there'll be so many people like trying to shoot you down for doing it, and because when you put your head above the parapet like that, you inevitably will be a target. But I thought, I love the bravery of the man for doing it, and there's so many people who will be cheering him on, like myself as well. So it's all those things are in there, but I just thought it was the most amazing. I don't think anybody could ever do a better Glastonbury show than that, but because it was rooted in the philosophy behind his choices, and even I loved the bit where he was interviewing, he was talking to individual members in the audience. So that was the individual side of it. And I love that. I think, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that in my show.
You could.
Yeah, because I kind of do it anyway when in the smaller shows, but bigger shows, it'd be nice to have a one-to-one with people, even though there's like well, for Chris Martin, there was 200,000 people in front of him. But yeah, and also internationally as well. You had people, artists from Korea performing, projected. It was just full of great visual representations of a great inclusive philosophy, and that's what I loved about it.
Yeah. And it had that element of humanity to it. Humanity is not just the individual human.
Yeah.
Talking to the person who has humans live as their album here. So no, it was I thought it was the summer always has to have at least one good magical thing happening. And I think that was it. So as you're about to head out on the road, tell me a little bit about how things are going to be different for you, because I know you guys switch it up. Obviously, there's going to be certain reasons behind that too, but with bringing Nick Hayward and Haircut 100 and bringing Mark Fry, ABC along.
Yeah. Well, we waited and waited to pull a brilliant lineup together, because it's actually quite hard because everyone is busy and it got later and later in the summer, and I was like, oh, is this going to happen at all? But then it Martin became free towards the end of the summer in this window, so we thought, and then of course Haircut 100 haven't played the States for 40 years, so that's really great, and they're bringing the whole band, brass section, everything. It's going to be one of those nights musically for everyone. Is going to be incredible, and I like to be involved in that, the fact that people are going to enjoy every moment of that evening. And yeah, so the patience paid off in the end. And honestly, I can't believe the the reaction. I mean, we're doing so well with the shows there. I mean, 5 of them are sold out already, and loads of them on the way. I mean, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that because it surprised me, and it's not normal, for me. I've been trying to get there for a long time, but finally, it's all clicking, and this tour is going to be just amazing. Yeah.
Well, and it just seems the lineup too, obviously fun is the first word that came to my mind when I thought of this, but just melodically and it's just going to be, I think, a really joyful thing, not that most lineups aren't, but it's a little different when you've got kind of 3 artists together or 3 groups together who are performing that just are happy folks in general, who want to be happy and see the lighter side of life.
Yeah, and I know Martin and I know Nick, so we've met multiple times, and so there's going to be that. It's going to be a very harmonious event.
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of difference. So sometimes you may not know it. Well, it takes so long to get to know somebody, even on tour, because your schedules are colliding. When they're on stage, you're preparing, and then when they're having dinner, you're doing sound check, or so actually you'd think you'd be spending a lot of time together, but actually there is not that much time because but people are doing their thing. So, but I know, and Nick, is a fantastic performer, and he can hold an audience on his own with a guitar. I always rate that very highly. So I can't wait to hear it, the music.
Okay, so I don't think I've ever gotten, because I'm always interviewing you when we do an official interview, I'm always doing it when a new record is coming out or when something new's coming out. But I just wanted to take a minute and just kind of backtrack on a couple questions I never got in over the years.
Cool.
And one is some of the songs that I always go back to in your catalog. Obviously, we've talked a lot about Hide and Seek, and that's being, one of my favorite songs, one of your favorite songs, the whole Live Aid connection with playing it on that day and how it took on layers of meaning. But I want to go back, and especially some albums that I don't think are talked enough about, Cross That Line and In the Running, People, some of these albums.
Yeah, well, I mean, Cross That Line was me really taking over the reins of producing myself. Apart from the 2 really outstanding tracks and my favorite tracks on it, which was Everlasting Love and The Prisoner, where I got to work with Chris Hughes and Ian Stanley, and have a totally different approach to making records. I'd worked with Rupert a lot, and that was my main. And Rupert was like, you only do 4 takes of the vocal. You just capture the energy of, and then chop that 4 takes together, no more. And yet you know with uh, with Ian Stanley particularly, I sang those vocals like over and over and over, just to get a certain energy and a certain tone, and I'd never worked like that before, and I realized that actually where I fall is somewhere in the middle of those two approaches. So I learned so much working with them. And Everlasting Love was, turned out to be a really popular hit, and The Prisoner is one of my favorite tracks, and it never really did much on the radio, but we're going to play it on this tour. Actually, I'm bringing it back into the set because it's such a killer track. Yeah, and then we used brass and stuff on the tracks that I produced in Cross That Line, and I've always been trying to experiment and expand my knowledge about how to make records and to work with different, you know, um, different lineups and different artists. And yeah, it's been good. And then, I mean, when you mentioned the People album, and that is my daughter Mika's favorite album of mine. And I was working out by what that is. And she likes it because it's so intimate. It's a very intimate record, and it's a quiet record, and it tells a lot of stories. And maybe it was one of the most personal record for me. And I don't think that people would have expected that record from me. But actually, it is one of my favorite records, and I'm with Cherry Red Records now. We're going to do a re-release of it, and I think that'd be really great because I found this old tape of a gig that we did at the Bloomsbury Theatre in London. It was a one-off gig, and it was with the biggest band I'd ever had. You could almost call it an orchestra because there was brass, there was strings, there was keyboard players, there was backing vocalists, and I think it was about 12, 13 people on stage. And the only copy I had of it was on a single DAT tape. And actually, Dan, who's just passed, was doing the transfer from the DAT tape onto hard drive. And now there's a new thing you can do in Logic, which is take a stereo file and break it down into its stems very cleanly. And so it means that we can mix that whole show, and make it sound the way that I really wanted it to sound. And so yeah, all these things, that's the good side of technology developing. And I'm sure people will be taking other people's tracks and dissecting them and doing mixes that, are maybe not approved by the artist. But for me to have that facility, I can do that with my own work and make it sound great.
Well, you mentioned, and Tomorrow Is Now has always been one of my
Oh
favorites.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, that to me, that the People album has the earthy feel to it. But I wanted to ask, when you go back and talk about or think about or even think about remixing or rethinking some of the music on all of these, in your mind, do you categorize that as eras of your life? Is each album kind of an era of your life, or do you think of them more clinically, like they're just products of what you were doing creatively?
No, I think you're right. It was a result of where I was in my life. And I'm thinking back to, I built the studio at home, and because I'd take so long to make records, that I need I need to have, need to be working on it for weeks and weeks. So I had a, big SSL desk in there, and, digital recorders and all the gear, so that I could work, to my heart's content, writing and recording. So the kids were around. They were coming up to the studio, and so it was a different phase in my life. I was at home more. I wanted to be at home more, and the kids were coming up to the studio and hanging out, and then lots of musicians were coming to the house, and we'd eat together. It was very it's a very nice time actually. And then you know I suppose that's it was coming towards the end of the Warner Brothers era as well. There's one more album to go, which was going to be in the running. Um, and yeah, so I suppose less. I didn't. I felt very at ease working in the studio and didn't feel a great pressure. Um, I was. It was much more a sort of grounded record, I think, across that line. I mean, but I still was thinking that it'd be good to have a couple of songs that could be played on the radio. I hadn't lost that. I mean, that would have been so, fortunately, Everlasting Love was turned out really well for that.
Never suppress the hit maker deep within you, right? Like the hit maker inside you will never be suppressed. You've always got to be thinking about that
Yeah. It's like
melodically.
my thing was I always wanted to be on the radio. That's where everybody can hear you. I mean, it isn't quite the same now, but I grew up. My mother always had the radio on in the kitchen while she was cooking for us, and so that's where I got my early music from, and that's what I aspired to do. And I know a lot of artists didn't want to be on the radio, did they? They thought that was uncool, not me. And that's where I wanted to be. That's where you could be listening to me. Well, I mean, I go into the supermarkets here in the States, and my music is being played. I mean, so often I go in and I don't quite know how to react, Christy. I
You
don't-
smile.
like go, that's me, that's me, and sort of like stuff, singing along with it. What do how do you react? Because it is actually quite exciting for me to hear that. And because then there's people with their shopping trolleys, singing along, and they have no idea that I'm standing next. It's kind of
Well, it's I have a theory about this. So whenever I go into our grocery store,
yeah,
they play great music in the grocery store,
yeah,
but I can never leave the grocery store without, and sometimes I will have it'll be all my favorite artists, or it'll be people that I've interviewed every single one of them. But I definitely am singing along when I hear you in the grocery store. It happens quite often. And I also hear, here all the time in the grocery store is Swing Out Sister.
all right, oh great.
They are in the grocery store every time you walk in a grocery store. They are on. So I hope somewhere, somehow that's translating to people being able to still enjoy the music, and maybe some pennies going into a piggy bank somewhere for you guys who made the music. But no, that is a phenomenon. It's like a grocery store. This is my favorite place to go, right? And hear music. All right, I have just a couple more questions, but I want to circle back because we didn't get to In the Running enough. And I know I've watched those YouTube videos that you did when you did a re-release, but I wanted to ask, some of those songs, I feel like I want to hear them live. I want to hear One Last Try. I want to hear City Song again. I went to the, was it 92 when you played with Carol Steele at the Bottom Line? And I was at that show. That's one of my top Hojo shows of all time. And bringing some of those back out, I'm just gonna put my request in for that.
Yeah, no. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, when I go out with the trio, which is at the moment it's me, Nick, and Robin, then we get a chance to do more of those songs. But I want to add a drummer to that trio, so it'll be won't be a trio anymore, but a gentle drummer, so we can visit some of those tracks again. So no, I will do that. I mean, I suppose the project with the band is about being able to, because I really love doing the big shows. That I love doing like sort of celebrating with a big crowd is hard to beat. Funny enough, doing the smaller gigs is more intense in a way, because you're so close to people, and you can't get anything wrong at all. You have to be very ridiculous about it all. And so it's sort of kind of more, there's more pressure in a way on the smaller shows. The big ones, it's like, everyone's singing along. It's one of those rare occasions where large groups of people get together and do something together, which is enjoy what they're hearing and seeing. And that's, I think, I think we were saying before, this is why people need this more than ever, because it's a communal thing. It's a communal celebration. So, I mean, I try and address it a little bit by, in the middle of the shows I'm doing at the moment, there's an acoustic section. So we go over to one side of the stage. It's me, Robin, and Nick. And it's like we create it like it's a smaller, club. And we play the songs acoustically. We do Nick's Too Shy as a kind of almost like a jazz track. And that goes down really well. And also I get a chance to then really do my chat a bit more with the audience. And yeah, I mean, yeah, so I'm trying to get that element in. I suppose if I do 2 hour shows, which I hope, we'll hopefully get to, I'll be able to do more then. I'll be able to cover those sort of songs in more depth and have more people on the stage. I mean, yeah, so there's so much to do. Yeah.
Well, you have so many songs. I mean,
Yeah.
you have a formidable catalog. So is there one of your songs that you wish would have had a different life of its own? That not necessarily that it didn't perform, but is there a song that maybe is overlooked or?
Well, it's interesting because Hide and Seek was heading for #1 in the UK, and obviously when you get to #1, it actually makes quite a difference, because then a #1 song has a certain kudos that echoes through time. And there was something happened with the marketing of the record at the time, and it got disqualified from moving up the charts. It got to #6, but it was predicted to be #1. And but they said the record company had broken the rules about marketing, giving a T-shirt with it or something. I don't quite know what it was. So it didn't get to, and I felt like, if you're going to be remembered by a song, I would like it to be that one, because it is a song about hope, and it's a very, it's a deep song, and it's simple, but it really, really leaves a lasting effect on people. And so that's, I mean, it's no, I got to play it at Live Aid, so it just got in
Right.
with that. So, so yeah, so maybe it's obviously was the right thing to happen. But I do think, like, what if it had got that #1 spot, what the difference would have been. Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't know that about the song. I mean, you're talking about the UK charts too.
Yes.
In America, it was like an album track, our cool album track,
Yes, that's right. It probably wouldn't. Yeah, I don't even know what they might have. They might.
America's not deep enough to understand. We need Life in One Day, and we need, we're not deep, but I do think, to me, that is your signature song, and that's just my personal feeling. But I've always thought, and Live Aid was a big part of people taking a second look. I think maybe that's what the gift was from that, was that people looked at that song in a whole new way. But special thanks to my guest Howard Jones for joining us on this episode of the Sweet Song Podcast. For more, visit purepopfornowpeople.com.